Hello, everybody. Eric here, and it's time to delve once again into F. Paul Wilson's Secret History of the World. And today I am talking about Ground Zero, obviously by F. Paul Wilson, and it is a Repairman Jack novel. And in this book, Jack Jack is hired to find a missing woman. She's kind of paranoid, into conspiracies. She calls her brother every day at 6 o'clock. When he doesn't get a call, he tries to contact her, can't find her, goes to her apartment, or can't contact her, goes to her apartment, finds a note that says, "Find Jack. Our Jack can find me." Basically says, "Don't go to the police if I'm missing. Go to Jack. Our Jack can find me." And then leaves the phone number and the website for Repairman Jack. And so Jack gets hired, and then things. I'm going to try to save all the spoilers for when we get into the secret history, how it all ties in together. But yeah, stuff happens. This is Jack's main case. It's really okay. All right. How do I do this? First of all, I just finished this morning, as of this recording, obviously, and I have not rated it on Goodreads yet, and I have not decided what my rating is going to be. I can't decide between a 4 and a 5. Now, if you're a regular viewer of this series and you watched the last video by the sword, you will know that at this point in this series, these are essentially no longer standalone books. There is an author's note in this, as there was in By the Sword, that says, as things rush to the conclusion, to Night World, to the end of the world as we know it, these are no longer standalone. There's not just sort of an overarching story running beneath the individual fixes that Jack is working on in each book. It's just one big long story. And that's the case. If you have not read another Repairman Jack book, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to understand what's going on. Now, in By the Sword, I gave that 5 out of 5 for just the book itself, and then I said maybe a lower rating as a book that someone might just stumble upon and read without having read the previous books. I don't think I liked this one. I still liked this a lot, but I don't think I liked it as much as By the Sword. So which is why I'm waffling. I think because I'd probably give it maybe a 4.5, but I'm not sure if I should raise that to a 5 or drop it to a 4. So you know what? I still don't know what I'm going to do on Goodreads, but I'm giving it a 4.5 here. So it's as well written as anything I've read from F. Paul Wilson. Repairman Jack is still a great character. As I said, he gets hired to find this missing person, this missing woman, and of course it's going to tie into everything. But meanwhile, we have there's stuff with the Dormentalists, which is basically Scientology. And we have the Kickers, which is a new cult kind of thing. And we have the Septimus Order. And there's a little bit of Dawn Pickering, who is this pregnant teenage girl. She's 18 at this point. She was introduced in Bloodlines, I think is the name of it. And there's I forget what they call him. It's Glaken, or however you say it, from the tomb. No, the keep. From the keep. It's so much. But now he's going by another name and everything, and I forget what the hero, the immortal hero-ish kind of guy, and the woman with the dog. I mean, there's so much going on, and you really aren't going to get it if you haven't read the previous stuff. But it's still well written. The characters are interesting. And there's so much that I think I'm gonna just jump into the how everything ties together, get into the spoilers, potential spoilers and things. So, um, so Ground Zero, F. Paul Wilson. Oh, and it all has to do with, it's called Ground Zero. It all ties into 9/11. Um, so, okay. 4.5 out of 5 stars. If you haven't read it, though, I absolutely don't recommend just picking up this book and reading it without reading the rest of the series. Now, let's get into the secret history part of things. So, spoiler warning, and I forgot to grab my copy of Signals, which has the most up to date list of the order of these books and where they fall and everything. So I have to rely on what's actually in the back of this. Excuse me. So Ground Zero takes place 2 months after By the Sword, the previous Repairman Jack book. It is in July of year zero minus one. If there's anybody who doesn't know what that means, year zero is when the end of the world as we know it occurs in Night World, the last book in all of this. And that's in May. So we have less than a year to go. And so Bloodlines introduced Dawn Pickering and a bunch of other things. Pickering, I think that's her name. I don't know why it's popping into my head that way, but it's Dawn. And then By the Sword took place like immediately following. And now this is 2 months later, and we still have all of these threads, these characters, the kickers that were introduced in previous books, the Dormentalists, which were introduced way back, and the Septimus Order. And this also ties into the Young Jack trilogy. I think there's 3 books from when Jack was in high school before he actually became Repairman Jack, because there are characters in this book, many characters, and it turns out characters in previous books that are from those 3 books. I have not read them. I do not own them at the moment. But there's a point where I was like, oh, these have to be characters from those books. So I looked it up on Amazon, and yeah, there's references to things that happened in those books. So this really ties into tons and tons of stuff. And the Opus Omega, the whole thing with, I don't remember which book it was in that introduced us to the Dormentalists. And they're burying these pillars with, they have to have a living person inside them, and they bury them, and it's creating this pattern, these sort of ley lines, if you know what those are. They're burying them at these intersections and blah 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 blah. And so that's involved in this, and the adversary, the evil is really ramping things up, and there's contingency plans on contingency plans, and so much going on. It's overwhelming, which is why I am now. I've kept saying in the past that I needed to read these things more frequently. At this point now, they're going to be every other book or every third book that I read. I read By the Sword, then I read another book, and then I went immediately to Ground Zero. I already know what I'm reading next, and then let me grab my phone to look at the list. So the next one is The Touch. So after I read my next book, I'm going to go straight to The Touch. And then I'll read 1 or 2 other things, and then next is The Void Protocol. So I do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more books to read. I think a couple of those might be novellas, but it's all just rushing to a conclusion, and I can't keep it all straight, so I need to read them more frequently. So yeah, we've got in this book, we have so many threads from so many of the books coming together, but still not having conclusions. I mean, Jack, spoilers, big spoiler for this book. Skip 30 seconds. Very early on, Jack finds the person that he's hired to find. And then but she's a big part of this conspiracy, it turns out. Or not conspiracy, but the whole thing, the battle between good and evil, for lack of a better way to put it. It's just the easiest way to say it. Um, so, I mean, it's not even in the earliest books. It was about Jack and his fixes, and yes, there was the overarching story, but mainly the focus of the book throughout the book was the fix. The fix is done very quickly here, but it leads to many, many other things. Is any of this making sense to anybody? It's incredibly well written. It's incredibly entertaining. It's fast paced. As always, I love the characters. But it's so much, and it all ties together. And it's as I said, I have to keep reading, or I'm going to lose it all. You know, I won't be able to remember anything. I already can't remember all the details of By the Sword. The sword from By the Sword is barely mentioned, but you know it's going to come into play at some point. The Compendium of Shrem, and just all of it. It's just craziness. It's wild, but it's amazing, and I can't wait to find out what happens. So yes, 2 months after the previous book, less than a year, basically 10 months until the events of the final. Well, it says Night World starts in May, so I don't know how long the events of Night World are, and these books tend to be a week or less. Each part is a day of the week. So there you go. I don't know if anything I've said makes any sense, but that's Ground Zero by F. Paul Wilson, a Repairman Jack novel. Let me check again. The 18th book in this series. 9 more to go, and that's not counting all the ones that I'm missing or got after I made the list and decided to do this. As I said, there's the Young Jack books. There's 3 of those. There's early Repairman Jack, so he's already Repairman Jack, but before the events of the Tomb. So that's 6 right there that I haven't read, that I don't own, that aren't part of this series. And then there's things like Black Wind and things that take place before The Keep, which is where I started, and I didn't have them at the time, so they're not part of this. So it's a lot of books. And eventually, and in no type of scheduled way, I'm going to go back and read that older stuff, the stuff that I missed, filling in the gaps, and add them to this. But that's way, way down the road. All right, there you have it. Here we go. I did say in the last video that I wasn't going to do like a question of the video for this series, but I do have one, which is, as I mentioned earlier, the events of 9/11, the World Trade Center, are front and center in this book. I didn't go into any details about why or anything, but it is a huge part of this book. And so my question is, how do you feel when a real world tragedy is used for fiction? And let's see. So 9/11 was 2001, and this book, it looks like, yes, first edition was 2009. So 8 years. First edition, September 2009. So only 8 years removed. But do you have any thoughts on that? Do you care? Do you not care? This adds an entirely new and fictional layer to what happened at 9/11. Is that something that bothers you? Do you not even think about it? I do know some people, or I've heard people say that they feel that this is inappropriate to tape something like this where so many people died, so many people still alive are still affected by it, be they the first responders who are physically and mentally affected by it, or surviving family members of people that died, and that the media should not use this real world stuff for gain, for lack of a better way to put it. So it's not something I have thought about a lot. I don't. Some people say all of these, say, true crime podcasts or TV shows, movies, series about serial killers are glorifying serial killers. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I'm not a huge fan of that. Just saying, it doesn't interest me that much. I used to be interested in like the psychology of serial killers a long time ago, but nowadays, meh. But it's kind of the same thing, I suppose, ish. Well, that's true crime, so it's more documentary style, but it's still mining these tragedies for views, for ratings, for money. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this? This might be the only question, the only question of the video that I have in this entire series, but it's something that came up. Something that I thought of, and I think way back, I heard somebody online talk about this, that they weren't sure how they felt about using this real world tragedy as a framework for this work of fiction. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter, I refuse to call it X, is at Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. And if you're on Blue Sky, I am at EL Smith. That's all I have for you this week. This time. Who knows when the next one of these is going to come out. That's all I have for you this time. Until next time, read more books.